Madam Deputy President, for over a year now, there have been protests every Sunday through the Sydney CBD, halting public transport along one of the busiest arteries of our city, preventing residents from driving their cars through the streets, and preventing local businesses, such as the small bars which this government claims to support, from receiving deliveries. I'm sure we all know of businesses which have been affected in this way, without even contemplating the business impact of large crowds marching out the front, some of whom have been holding up placards with swastikas, some of whom have been flying the flags of prescribed terrorist organisations. Members of this House have declared that protesters do not need heavily armed police officers in order to protest. But who then will shut down the traffic? Who then will keep the protesters safe? Who will keep the passers-by safe? The very fact that there have been no violent incidents at these protests shows the important and valuable work that New South Wales Police have done to keep all members of the community safe. There is a problem, however. We know that the resources of law enforcement are stretched thin, and we know that the state budget is also stretched very thin. These protests every week have forced police officers to work overtime hours every single Sunday, over 200 of them, in order to protect protesters and the community. Frontline workers have been protesting outside this parliament all year, while the government declares itself unable to pay for their pay rises, and yet the cost of wages for police alone has exceeded $5 million. This is not the fair exercise of freedom of speech, but an impingement on the lives of all other citizens. Nobody is calling for protests to be banned. That is unacceptable. But freedom of political expression does not mean the freedom to close down city streets, interfere with the lives of city residents, and expect all other people of New South Wales to foot the bill for managing traffic and keeping people safe, especially when this interference occurs week after week after week after week. The question was posed early today by the Honourable Stephen Lawrence whether any restrictions, such as any sort of asking protesters to help meet the costs of keeping them safe and the community safe from these protests, whether that would actually meet the High Court's tests in relation to the implied freedom of political communication, and in particular, whether any, for example, payment would be reasonably and appropriately adapted to meet the legitimate end. I submit absolutely, because the burden of meeting these protests and policing has exceeded anything that could be considered reasonable.
Thank you. The member's time has expired. Ms Sue Higginson.